Hello, and welcome to the BlockSolid podcast, where we talk about the evolution of the property market, the newest tech that enhances and revolutionizes the world of property as we know it, and how we, the owners, the buyers, the renters, the investors, the technologists, the entrepreneurs, can benefit from it all. I'm Yale, CEO and co-founder of SolidBlock, a pioneer startup in real estate tokenization, and I'd love to welcome my friend Douglas Borthwick. How are you, Douglas?
I'm great, Yale. Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. I mean, everybody in the world, I think by now knows how much I love INX because I keep talking about it. And I thought it's high time for you to be on our podcast.
I'm delighted to be here. Everyone that I talk to regarding real estate, I send your way because I think that you really are the premier voice, I think, in this space and someone that really understands this market a lot more than I do.
Well, thank you for that amazing compliment coming from you, Douglas. Now, I'd love for you to kind of talk about your path to what you're doing today and your background and what led you to get to INX.
Sure. My background was Carnegie Mellon, so technology early on, business school at Yale, and then 10 years at Morgan Stanley in foreign exchange derivatives trading. Then I ran proprietary trading at Merrill Lynch. I went to Standard Chartered, ran Latin America business. The last gig was at TP-ICAP, an institutional interdealer broker, where I built a foreign exchange ECN. But then I heard about someone. I was working in Israel with the SEC to create a security that would trade 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for retail. And I was hooked, I was interested, and I got in a plane. And for the first time, I flew to Israel, to Tel Aviv, and I met Shai Datika, INX's CEO. And he explained to me that they'd gone to the SEC because they'd seen ICOs back in 2017 and 18. I thought this is a great idea, but it's completely illegal. So we want to do something that's like an ICO, but legal and also for a fully registered security. So before, things existed in the digital realm for security tokens, and that was really for accredited investors, Reg Ds, and they were private securities, but no one had actually decided, let's go whole hog, do a full prospectus offering and offer it to retail institutions around the world for a security token. But Shai took that leap. I joined him. We worked with the SEC for 950 days, brought in MWE, a law firm, and Ernst & Young in Israel, and really hammered out over 950 days, the first ever prospectus offering for a fully registered security to IPO in the blockchain. Now, as a company, we had a choice of going out there and raising money from venture capital or private equity companies, but instead we decided, let's build a community and let's do this where the primary cash that comes for our company, instead of VCs or private equity, we would raise from individuals all around the world.
Wow.
We got approval from the SEC. In August of last year. We opened up the doors 48 hours later and had people come to our website where they could invest in the vision that we had. In the end, we closed it in April of this year. We ended up with 74 countries representing 7,250 token holders. Today, I think there's 8,250 token holders. And the average age was 42 years old. And like I said, from all around the world. And we realized that, what we've created now is a great way for people to invest in companies at a startup stage, but also a great way for folks to finance all sorts of things. And it's not just about real estate. Security tokens have been about real estate, I think, for at least the last 7 years. That's what people have really talked about when they've thought about security tokens, blockchain. It's always been real estate.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think real estate?
I think people took security tokens and took the security part and thought that meant securitized. And if it was securitized by something, then real estate was sort of that ultimate goal. But also you think of real estate and something that can easily be fractionalized. People can understand that I have an apartment building, that building's worth $50 million, but I can't afford the whole apartment building. But I think it's going to appreciate over the next 10 years. So I'd like to buy a sliver.
Yeah.
And you can buy a sliver today by buying an apartment, but not everyone's a Russian oligarch. Some people can't afford to buy a whole apartment, but they want to have the exposure to that real estate. Gotcha. Now they could do it through a REIT, a real estate investment trust in the US. But if they do it this way, it's a much more, I think you feel a lot closer to the actual building and the building owners, but also you can get the dividends sent to you directly into your electronic wallet. And it can be sent to you in Ethereum or USDC. But I think that there's a much closer feeling. I mean, this feeling of community that we certainly talk about at INX a lot, where a security token gets the issuer so much closer to the investor. Coca-Cola has no idea who their investors are. As a security token, I know exactly who my investors are. I can look in their wallets at all times on etherscan.io. I can see people buying and selling in real time. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah. So are you guys big on Ethereum, or do you have plans to add in additional blockchains?
Well, we're on Ethereum right now. We're adding level 2s on Ethereum. Avalanche would be one. I think I'm very interested in the Liquid blockchain. I'm very interested in Algorand blockchain. I think that we all talk about blockchains today like it's significant, but I think that in the future, the actual investor couldn't care less about what blockchain it's on. They just want to make sure that it's efficient and they're getting the right service. And I think of blockchains as being as train tracks. Right. Some train tracks today are very congested. Some have no one riding on them at all. The ones with no one riding on them, very, very cheap. The ones that are congested, very, very expensive. But it reminds me sort of Malthus. And Malthus was this economist back in the day, hundreds of years ago. And he had a theory that the world was going to run out of food because the population was growing so quickly. Mm-hmm. And I think people think about this with Ethereum. They feel, so many people are using Ethereum that at some point it's going to be too expensive. Well, what Malthus forgot was that folks would turn around and create technologies that would make food production much, much better. And I think that, ETH 2.0 that we're expecting hitting around March or April of next year, I think will bring down prices considerably. And then the congestion is also going to be relaxed a little bit by folks moving onto the Avalanche blockchain or moving on to the Algorand blockchain. But one thing about Ethereum is it's gone through the paces with all the regulators. Everyone seems very, very comfortable with it. And I think that it's that comfort level that gives me comfort, because when I'm doing a deal that's in the $100 million to $1.7 billion range, and we've got some deals we're working on at that level, institutions want to have a comfort level that's going to be equivalent to what their investment is. And I think everyone right now feels very comfortable with Ethereum. And while there are other blockchains that are garnering lots of press today, they're yet to be proven in an institutional space. And the SEC, I haven't seen them sort of stepping up and talking about these other blockchains yet either.
I love that you explained it so well, because everybody's asking me the same question. And why Ethereum, why not something else? So I think you really hit the nail on the head, is that our job in the security token space is to kind of balance the user experience with regulation, right? For us, regulation comes first always. You mentioned the Malthusian trap, but there's also, the hierarchy of needs, right? Another economic triangle. So, the regulation and compliance is in the bottom of that. That's a must, right? And that's why INX is so cool, because you guys just went head on and went straight into regulation and said, okay, we want to make it as accessible as possible to retail investors as well. We're going to go and get this IPO going. Is there anything else that makes INX stand out?
When we spent a lot of time with the SEC. And one thing we noticed was that one of the anxieties or the concerns that regulators have is that people can lose their Bitcoin in their wallet and it's gone. It's lost forever. Mm-hmm. Or they send their Bitcoin to an Ethereum address and it's gone. So I think the common thought is, you can't lose your Bitcoin. People lose Bitcoin in boating accidents or in landfills every single day. And I don't think that the SEC wants the retail investor, your grandmother, your children, to lose their IRA or their 401k in a boating accident.
Right.
Now, because of this, we came up with the ERC 1404 and worked on that with TokenSoft. Yeah. And what's remarkable about that smart contract, about using that on the Ethereum blockchain, is that you can't lose it and it's really hard to steal it. And so let's say you have an ERC 1404 token, and INX is an ERC 1404. Yeah. And you put it into a wallet and you forget your phrase to get into your wallet. That's no problem. We can revoke from that wallet and reissue onto a new wallet. Yeah. Let's say someone tries to steal, someone tries to hack into your MetaMask wallet. This happens all the time. Yeah. Well, the INX token will look up to the blockchain and say, hey, this guy that's telling me to move, does he have a whitelisted wallet, or she? Right. If he or she hasn't got a whitelisted wallet, the token refuses to move.
I think you called it the chicken that can be stolen on the last panel when we were together.
That's right. And it can be. Someone could, get through the whitelisting process with a fake ID and fake information and blah, blah, blah. But, you know, if a whitelisted wallet takes a token from another whitelisted wallet, we've got that person's name, phone number, address, utility bill, passport, everything.
Right.
So
but I have a question for you, Douglas.
Mm-hmm.
The whitelisting is done on the platform level, right? Not on the blockchain level.
The whitelisting is done by TokenSoft, which is a registered transfer agent.
Yeah.
And now I'm not a technical guy. I'm not the guy to talk about the technicals about whether the whitelist, but certainly no, your token is looking onto the blockchain to find out whether that other address is whitelisted.
Okay.
That whitelist is on the blockchain for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So
It's not looking into a database over at TokenSoft. It's looking onto the blockchain.
Okay, got it. So let's call up TokenSoft. No, I'm just kidding. But that's actually a good idea to get them on the podcast and ask them how it's done. Everybody's concerned over, you know, enough decentralization, right? So that's kind of the question that comes up a lot for us. And we do things a very similar way and use the same standard actually that TokenSoft has developed, together with you guys, the 104, and I believe it is the winning one.
I think that it's remarkable in that I don't know of any other standard right now where it can't be lost, where it can't be stolen, where there's a moating around theft. Because one of the biggest issues, you know, when we came out, maybe the first ever prospectus offering, and in the front of the prospectus, it said, look, right now, there's no one that can trade this and there's no one that can custody it.
Yeah.
But we were still allowed to go out there and sell to retail. And the reason, I believe, because, you know, we never get the real reasons from the SEC or other regulators, but the reason is because you don't need a custodian if you can keep it in your regular wallet and you don't have to worry about it disappearing. Custodians are there to, you know, why do people put gold in a vault at Fort Knox? Well, because they want it to be safe.
Right.
And so you've got custodians that are building all of this cyber safety. But maybe if you can create a smart contract that in itself protects itself, well, that's like I'm saying, it's like the chicken. You don't have to build a fancy chicken coop if the chicken can't be stolen.
No, absolutely. I love it. And in general, you know, INX is working on these, you know, blockchain standard, right? So obviously you're ahead of the game for securities trading because you're using the blockchain. Is there anything else that, you know, makes INX a game changer?
You know, well, we trade securities in a different way. We actually never touch your securities when you trade them over INX. And so it's very similar to the DeFi. Now, everyone that trades on INX has to go through KYC and AML. That's the standard. But you have your MetaMask wallet that syncs in with our matching engine. We match two MetaMask wallets together. Dollars flow from one to the other. Tokens flow from one MetaMask wallet to another MetaMask wallet. Now, I'd say if you were to ask me a year ago about MetaMask wallets, everyone would say, what's that? No one knew. And they looked at Open Finance and thought, these guys don't know what they're doing. We saw Open Finance before we bought it as being a jewel in the rough, because MetaMask wallets were maybe 1 million about a year ago outstanding, and now there's 16 million. Wow. There was only 5 million MetaMask wallets in daily use back in May of this year. Wow. Now there's 16 million. And why? NFTs. NFTs came along. People started opening up MetaMask wallets. Once they got a MetaMask wallet open and it's on their phone, they think, what else can I put in there? I'll put some USDC in there. Now I can use that for currency. I'll put in some Ethereum. I can use that for spending bills. I'll have my NFTs in there. And you know what? Now I can hold my securities. You know, you can trade their securities now 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year through INX. And this is something that doesn't exist. There's lots of platforms that trade security tokens, and they're open from 9 in the morning until 4:30 in the afternoon, or one just announced they're open from 8 a.m. until 8 p.m. Digital assets, the promise of digital assets was 24 hours trading, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Doesn't care where you are in the world, you can trade it in fractional format. INX right now is the only one that does that.
Wow, I love it. I love it, Douglas. I'm so excited about what you guys are doing. Can't wait to get some assets onto INX. So what kind of assets are you starting to work with?
Well, we've got some very exciting things in the pipeline, but I have to be very careful about how I describe these. I can talk about the things that are being talked about that I've seen in Telegram chats. I can confirm certain things.
All right, go ahead.
There's the Tenaga Beach Resort that's in the Philippines. That one's coming our way. And that's been in the Tenaga Beach, in the Telegram group there. They're already talking about that. So that's going to be very exciting. Now, that was on the Ravencoin blockchain, and they'll be doing a switch over onto the Ethereum blockchain for us to list that.
Well, we had a press release that we're putting a few assets on INX. You know, that's easy.
Well, for sure. I mean, I think it was $150 million worth of assets coming over from Solid Blocks, which is also very exciting. I think that right now they're tied up in Reg D, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely.
And then once that ends, then we'll pull those guys on. But I've got, aside from real estate, we've also been looking into the OTC. The OTC is, I'd say that maybe there's 50 security tokens that are created every year globally. And there's a lot of people that are snapping for these assets. And I think it's going to grow considerably. But in the meantime, while we're waiting for people to grow those, we're also taking companies that are already public companies that are already listed on an exchange somewhere else, and we're having them delist, lose their tickers, and then list with INX. And EV Biologic was a company that's already put out the PR to do that. And the reason is because there are a lot of companies with over 50% shorts, naked shorts against them on different exchanges. And when you're a security token, you can't be shorted. Not today. And so by doing that switch over from the traditional exchange onto INX, you squeeze out all the shorts, and obviously the market cap should move appropriately. I've identified about 225 companies there in that situation. And then I've also got a lot of primary raises happening that we have about to announce. Lots of them coming from similar types of areas, in that I've got ESG, but also there's Bitcoin miners like crazy. You know, China's banned Bitcoin mining. There's a lot of miners on ships that are coming on their way over to the United States. And I think there's a lot of US companies that are very interested in buying those miners. I think there's a lot of investors all around the world that want to be invested in Bitcoin mining. So you've got miners that already have land, that have secured power contracts. Now they want to get cash in to buy the miners. And, you know, they're looking for investors to help them with that. And I think this is going to be Stoker, actually, Arnab put out a tweet a couple of days ago. I think, you know, the guys at Stoker well as well. And he said he thinks that 2022 is going to be the year of the miner. And I think it is. I think that there's going to be so much demand for people, for product, to invest in miners, because, you know, the yields are so incredible compared to traditional yields that folks are used to. I'm looking at yields of 3 to 5% a month. And that sounds like a lot. That's about 87% a year annually that we paid into someone's wallet. That's pretty exciting. And I don't think traditional finance can really, you know, handle that. They look at something like that and say, that's a scam. But when we look at DeFi, we look at all of our friends and colleagues that play around in DeFi all day, they're making 30% a month, you know? So the opportunities are so significant in the DeFi space, but also in the crypto space. Most people don't want to touch it because they feel like it's too complicated. What do you mean? I've got to do this. I have to do this with Uniswap. I got to do this. You know, there's too many steps. The UI, UX is a disaster. But if you can invest in a security that gives you all these benefits, that pays you into your wallet, heck, even a Reg D, sure, you can't trade the product, but you can collect the dividends and spend the dividends. So I think that there's going to be a lot of interest in that sort of thing. But I'm also very interested in real estate, because as you know, there's a steady demand around the world, and I'm sending lots of people your way. So I'm hoping we get to see a lot of those types.
I talk to all of them, you know, try and make it easy for them, as easy as we can. You know, come deposit your real estate with us. We'll do everything so that at the end of the process, you get on INX and get that liquidity that you want. All right.
Well, that's just it. Folks have real estate assets and they're saying, what do I do with it? And I say to them, I'm not a real estate guy. I don't know, but yeah, hell does. You got to talk to this woman that's sitting in Israel, because she knows her stuff inside and out. And I can't tell you how much it means to me that I have the ability to be able to send folks your way, because I find it very complicated, real estate. Now, what I don't find complicated is when I find companies that have large populations already. And by that, I mean large communities already. By that, I mean there are sports teams that have millions of fans.
Right.
There are actors and movie directors that have millions of fans. And, you know, one thing that we're doing is we're building out areas whereby we can take those fans, turn them into fans of security tokens and bring them onto INX, and then introduce them to all of the other things that we have. And we're not just about security tokens. You know, as a company, we have security tokens. We've got the securities broker dealer and ATS. We do primary raises and secondary trading, but we also have a cryptocurrency trading business that's open in 27 states now in the US that we're about to start marketing on actually today. And then we also have an interdealer broker that deals with the direct banks, and that's based in Israel. So we've got a lot of different businesses all in the digital space. And now we're sort of bringing them all together, you know, to create one coherent way. Because one of the things that we heard the most when we started up the security token trading business was folks are like, well, why can't I get dollars on the weekend? It's a good question, right? This is crypto. And the reason was because you're using a traditional banking system. So how about we do it such that you can bring your Ethereum or your Bitcoin on a Saturday, immediately change it into dollars, and then take those dollars and buy whatever's on our security token trading platform, within minutes. And so that's something that we've had to develop and build because it hasn't been done before. And we don't really buy things off the shelf. As a company, we like to build our own technology. That's probably why our technology guys are mostly in Israel, because that's where the smarts are. We're building out lots of these different things to, I guess, improve the UI UX that before people have looked at and said it's a disaster. And it is. You can't look at anything in the crypto or security token space and think, oh, this is simple. My grandparents could figure this out. It reminds me of when my parents were given a VCR for the first time. And they said, what do you do with this? Right. And then they'd call the kids in and say, can you figure out the VCR? And the kids come in, boom, 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 all done quickly. But for folks that don't know, a VCR is what came before a DVD player, and DVD players came before streaming.
Yeah.
So we're going way back into VCRs.
Yeah.
But that must have been 1986, 1985 when VCRs came out, and the UI UX was a disaster.
Right.
But kids use it immediately.
Well, your users are 42 on average, so they should know. And that's probably the listeners of this podcast. So yeah, we do know what VCRs are. So that's really cool. Yeah.
But it takes figuring out. It takes figuring out,
right.
But anyone figures, like my thought was, how do I get a 50-year-old man, let's say, or woman to open a MetaMask wallet for the first time to do trades?
But why are NFTs so appealing? You're saying that so many people went through the trouble of opening a MetaMask after the NFTs.
Well, I think that NFTs appeal. I think it actually does skew younger. But think about NFTs. I've got teenage children, and they would buy a new skin every single week for when they're playing, any of their games that they're on, and it was thousands of dollars a week. And yeah, it was annoying. But essentially, they were buying NFTs, except for the fact that they weren't non-fungible. They were fungible because everyone's buying exactly the same skin. So I get the idea of buying something that's virtual, but at the same time, you're the only owner. I mean, after they've bought these skins and they've done all the things they want to do in this game, they stop playing the game and it's like, where's my money gone? Yeah.
But according to the statistics, actually, the majority of the buyers for the NFTs are a 35 to 44-year category, predominantly male in that age category. And when we look at 18 to 34, a little fewer, right? And then also kind of the gender gap is, is taking off. Everybody's on the same page, right?
Is that broken down by dollars invested, or is that broken by number?
Ownership, number off, yes.
All right. That's interesting. I'd say that, but if I want to get someone that's interested in security tokens to open up a MetaMask wallet, not an NFT guy, I've got to offer stuff that the 18-year-old screaming children will be begging them to buy for them. Whether that's Taylor Swift's music catalog, or whether it's James Bond's net present value of his future cash flows, that's the sort of thing that's going to get middle-aged people to start really flocking into this space. And flocking is important. The only way you get people flocking into a space is you got to open it up from just accredited investors to all investors.
Yeah.
I think this is where INX took a stand, and we put that flag down and said, look, retail's got to be involved now. The Reg S lets retail get involved all outside the United States. The Reg D is restricted only to accredited investors, but obviously a Reg D, Reg S is the fastest way to get folks, to get an issue into the market.
The people you're sending to me, they're asking, okay, what about Reg A plus? What about this? What about that? So I'm telling them the fastest way for you is to do a Reg D with us. And in a year, you get on INX and you get the same advantages, and you don't have to pay a lot of money to the regulators. You don't have to wait for them to approve you, right?
Well, it's true, but I think you got to do the Reg D, Reg S.
Yeah, Reg D, Reg S automatically,
Because the Reg S, everyone outside the US, retail as well, only has a 40-day lockup, then they can start trading. And by the way, I'm not licensed in any way, and I'm not giving any investment advice to your listeners.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Reg D, Reg S is certainly fast to market.
Yeah.
But the Reg A plus is limited because it only gets you 75 million. The full prospectus, Reg A plus and full prospectus, in my mind, they're both about 7 months. Maybe they cost $700,000 in legal fees.
Right. So Douglas,
Reg A plus, just do the full prospectus.
The issue with the Reg S when you're doing Reg D and Reg S is if we open up the trading for Reg S users, the Reg D users are going to miss out. So shouldn't we wait for everyone to be able to trade?
No, I don't think so. I think that the Reg D users can sit there and they can watch the Reg S, but they know at the time when they're buying into it that they're locked up. And then exchanges like myself and the smart contracts make sure that that person outside the US, that person in Israel that's bought into this, or that person in Japan that's bought this, can't sell it to an American.
Right.
And then after that 1 year's passed, there's a filing that gets made, and then the Reg Ds and the Reg S's can all play around in the same sandpit together. But I think that most issuers want to see liquidity as soon as possible.
Yeah.
But also, you know, when you're dealing with an instrument that someone's buying for a dividend, let's say, because let's say it's real estate and there's a quarterly or monthly dividend you get based on the appreciation or however you structure it. The Reg D folks can still get that. They're just locked up in that they can't sell out of their position and they can't buy a further position, but they're still getting the dividends, and they can take those dividends and they can spend them. So the only thing they're locked up in is they're locked up in the investment, and that they can't get out of it, but they can still get the dividends that they're getting from that investment over that period of time they're locked up. Accredited investors understand what they're walking into. I don't think they're going to be upset that the Reg S guys are trading. And I think that if anything, the more trading that happens, the better for the issuer, because the issuer is going to get more noise. If the price goes up in value, that's great advertising for the issuer. So the next building they come along with to sell, or the next piece of property, someone's going to say, you know what, this is trading well. I like it. I'd like to buy your next product. If it doesn't trade and is locked up for a year, people just, for a year, there's no marketing, there's nothing. No one's going to even think about the product because it's just sitting there in limbo. So I like getting the Reg S out there, but also I got to tell you, I think around 30% of the investors in the INX token were international. And there's a lot of folks internationally that have interest in the yield-bearing product. And the taxes on security tokens are different from the taxes for, let's say, crypto.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we always think about the US accredited investor, but there's not that many of them, or there are, but they're not really folks that like to trade.
Right.
There's folks all around the world, there's retail around the world that really wants to get involved in these types of products and really wants to jump into the field. And there's a thirst for products. I mean, go into the INX chat on Telegram and you'll hear people calling all day long for more and more and more. So, you know, our job is to find product to bring it to this market. And then the market will grow as we bring quality products into production. But you bring a Reg D in, maybe it brings on 500 to 1,000 people. You make it a Reg D, Reg S, maybe you bring in 8,000 people. I'm an exchange. I like to bring on as many people as possible. Once they come onto my exchange, I say, why don't you take a look at Bitcoin and Ethereum as well as the security tokens you're trading? And why don't you look at these other issues that we have too? So the more the merrier.
So Douglas, you were saying, you know, NFTs and so on. So don't you think that a few NFTs or a lot of the NFTs out there should really be securities?
A few. I think that we're probably looking at a situation where anything over $10,000 within the next 18 months will be decided to be a security by the SEC or by another regulator in the United States. The reason being,
amen,
all you have to do is go on Twitter and you see an NFT trading between two anonymous Ethereum addresses for $50 million. Well, I don't know what you think of that, but I think that's probably money laundering.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's a great way right now. In the old days, if you wanted to launder money, you had to go to a racetrack in Mexico, pick up some chips, send some dollars abroad. And, you know, I think
we've all
Switzerland
with a suitcase. Yeah.
We've all watched Narcos. So we see how money laundering works. These days, you can do it through an NFT, through somewhere like an OpenSea. I mean, I don't know if there's any KYC or AML or anything. It's just two anonymous addresses buying something for a lot of money. Right. And I think that's probably going to get stamped down on. Now, we've gone into an agreement with a company called eToro. eToro did the first ever NFTs as securities.
Securities, yeah.
So SNFTs, and then we're building a marketplace for SNFTs. Should be ready by, I'd say, first or second quarter of next year. The first ones they did were Reg Ds. And so we've got a little bit of time before we've got to have that marketplace up and running. But I think that going forward, they'll probably do some Reg S's too, so that we can have multiple different folks from all around the world get involved in this.
Got it. All right. So what do you think about the metaverse?
I read something yesterday that someone had bought some real estate in the metaverse for a lot of money. And then another person came in and said, you know, Manhattan, Soho was doing nothing. For 300 years, the price went zero, went nowhere. And it's only in the last 50 years it's appreciated. Mm-hmm. So people may be running into a metaverse and doing land grabs today. But I always think that the astute investor is going to wait a little while and see what becomes important and what doesn't. Metaverse is exciting. I like to sit back a little bit and see where things go. I'd like to put up adverts all through the Metaverse. But even before Metaverse showed up, I look at something like Infinite Fleet, and that's one of Samson Mao's games that when Samson's with Blockstream. And Infinite Fleet had a thing where you could buy a spaceship. You could buy that spaceship and you could put your name on it. It's like advertising. Mm-hmm. But, this was about a year and a half ago, they came up with this sort of idea. So the ideas are already there. They already existed. Metaverse just becomes much bigger because Facebook puts their name on it. But I think we've already realized that there's an online community. For a lot of folks, the online community is a lot more real and a lot more interesting than the community that we live in our daily lives. I don't know if you've got any kids between the ages of 12 and 17.
Getting there. Mm-hmm.
So when you do, for them, their real life isn't hanging out with mom and dad. Their real life is hanging on the computer, talking to their friends as virtual characters, doing all kinds of different tasks. So, the metaverse is something that we're all moving towards at some point. And as we're talking over Zooms and things like that, the question is, isn't the next step where we're just virtual characters walking around in a game, talking to each other from the comfort of our home, which then becomes a movie. People will be making movies all the time about how in the future, the dystopian future, no one ever leaves their home. They're completely overweight and they're sitting as beautiful characters in a metaverse.
The Ready Player One scenario.
That's right. So, at some point, our simulation will also be in a simulation too.
For sure. All right. So in September, I read this press release about you guys partnering with GMO Trust. And that was really cool. Like the world's first regulated Japanese yen stablecoin. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, I ran into these guys about a year and a half ago. And there's stable coins and there's stable coins. So USDC is a stable coin that's backed by dollars and money markets. And Gensler recently came out and said, look, if you're a stablecoin backed by money markets or securities, then you're a security. The interesting thing with the GMO stablecoin and for the yen and the Z dollar is that they're both backed 1-to-1 with either the yen or the dollar. And I think that in the next few months, we're going to see why that's really important. Now, the yen is the second most traded currency in the world. Dollar yen is the second pair that's traded in the world after euro against dollar. And we thought it was very important that given that Japan is, I think, the second or third biggest user of crypto, that having a stable coin that's backed by the yen is going to be very, very big. Now, it's not today, but the OCC, the Office of Comptroller and Currency, that's the regulator for federal banks in the US, came out about a year ago and said, we want banks to stop using this ACH and SWIFT. It's not really efficient. Start using stable coins. And I think they talked about USDC. So USDC is backed by, but also went through the NYDFS, New York Department of Financial Services, which regulated, as did the yen stablecoin, GN and Z dollar. And so we think that GN and Z dollar become very important stablecoins in the future. GMO obviously is the largest trader of foreign exchange in the world, thanks to their retail outpost in Japan. The Japanese housewife, Mrs. Watanabe, is the biggest trader of foreign exchange in the world. Something like 30% of all dollar yen overnight is traded by retail. GMO runs that business, owns that business, and decided to partner with us. And we thought that was very exciting. We actually start a campaign December 1st today, where we actually have the guy that trades the most GMO stablecoin on our platform actually wins GMO stablecoins. I think it's like 20,000 in prizes and an NFT from INX. And we took one of our community put together for the last 15 days of our IPO and the countdown, they made little videos. And so we've created them and made them into NFTs that we then give to the winners of this competition. So we're taking GMO, NFTs, everything pretty much we've talked about except for real estate, and we've thrown it into this competition.
All right. Very, very cool. So as we are coming to an end of this awesome podcast, I want to ask you maybe one or two more questions. So the first is, if you had a magic wand, what would you change about the business or maybe about regulation? Any aspect of it that would make your life easier?
I think that the accredited investor statute in the United States is past due. I think that given that retail in the US are allowed to buy a lottery ticket, gamble, play on the horses, and yet for some reason they can't invest in private securities unless they're millionaires or they earn a certain amount of money, is in my mind ridiculous.
Right.
And retail, if they're allowed to do all of these things, like to sign up for the army, like to do have children, but they're not allowed to invest in something, I think that's a little bit silly. And I think that if I had a magic wand, I would take this accredited investor stuff and I just throw it out the window and let retail make up their own minds. But I would strengthen it such that you need to have a prospectus. The cool thing for issuers right now with accredited investors is you don't need a prospectus. You just need a term sheet. Boom. Here, please invest in me. Yeah. And a prospectus is a lot of work. But I still believe that prospectus gives so much insight to the investor and protection to the investor.
Yep.
And, after a while, they'll become cookie cutter. So people will be able to take copy and paste, and you'll be able to see what you're investing in. But, I'd love retail to have less obstructions in order for them to purchase private assets, because right now I think there's a lot of things in the way. And it really does shock me that as inflation hedges, the wealthy have been able to look at real estate or fine art or, anything, any big ticket hard assets, been able to buy them in the past and surf the wave of inflation. And today, the folks that don't have a lot of cash, that aren't accredited investors, don't have many options. Now, Bitcoin's come along. It's been a great option. You buy some Bitcoin, you can surf the wave of the inflationary wave. And now you can do it with real estate, thanks to companies like yourselves. But they've got to have gone through that curing period, and you got to be living outside the United States. I don't see why American citizens shouldn't be allowed to be able to come in there, American residents, and buy real estate as a retail person without having to go through so much rigmarole. So, democratization of finance is really what we're looking at for the next 10 years. What's really interesting is that Bitcoiners make up about 38% right now of swing voters in the US. And I would say if the Republicans were to come out and say, look, forget about Donald Trump, but we're embracing Bitcoin, and they post the Democrats as being anti-Bitcoin, there would be a shoo-in for them to get into the next election. I think Ted Cruz is already kind of working on that angle. And the thing about Bitcoiners is, and the things about folks in crypto, it's not related to race. It's not related to wealth. It's not related to, skin color or income. It's just related to people that are sharing a similar idea about, decentralization. And so I think that it's a winning ticket, and that winning ticket could change, the landscape, the fiscal landscape and the investing landscape in America.
Okay, love it. So I'm there with you, Douglas. I think that people need to have much more access to these products, and it's definitely ridiculous. I think that now the definition of accredited investors has changed a little. I'm not sure when the changes are coming into an effect, but I like the fact that you can invest if you have a certain level of education at least. So we're actually planning to offer some courses on our site on top of tokenization course, but also in general an investing course so that you can actually pass and become accredited, right? So because we do want people, right? So yeah.
Very smart. I like that. Wow. Maybe we should
collaborate on that.
We should work with you guys to go through that course, and then they can invest it in our platform. That's genius.
Yeah, thank you.
I've always said you're very smart.
Oh, thank you so much.
I think you may be a genius.
Well, I appreciate that. And it's been fun talking to you. Anything else you want to share about INX and your vision and just in general industry insights?
I think that INX, we've been a sleeping giant for a long time. And I think that over the next 3 to 6 months, our presence is going to grow significantly. And I guess I can't give you the reasons why, but I think that as a company, we're about to be quite well known for a number of different things, whether it's the listings we're going to be doing on the security token platform, or whether it's moves we're making in the equity space. But either way, I'm sitting on a lot of good news, and I really can't wait to share it. Hopefully I'll be sharing it over the next 3 to 6 months. All
right. We're going to be waiting and sharing your news. Okay, Douglas.
All right. Hopefully I'll see you soon.
See you soon in New York or maybe in Israel. Have a fantastic day. Thanks for coming on. So this was BlockSolid with Yael Tamar. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or by visiting our website at solidblog.co/podcast. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to rate, review, spread the word, and go on the INX website. What is it? INX.co, right?
That's it, INX.co. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Have a good day, Douglas.
Thank you, Yael. Cheers.
Cheers.